Sachs in the Morning. Sports, money, life. Steve Sachs.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here with Sachs in the Morning. And this is our long form version of our show. And we are so pleased to have with our special guest this week, the executive producer of the one and only Simpsons broadcast. This is Al Jean. Al, thank you so much for being on Sachs in the Morning. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you for doing the show 30 years ago.
You're welcome.
We'll still enjoy it.
For our viewers, Al, you can tell them how this happened. I was on The Simpsons 30 years ago, and Don Mattingly and I were members of the New York Yankees. They asked us to come in when we came to Anaheim, where they do the voice taking. And Don and I went there, and we said, you know what, let's just try it. We don't know what the show's going to be someday. And my gosh, it turned out to be one of the most iconic shows in the history of television. Al, tell us a little bit about how that show came about and garnering all the players to come there and how this whole thing came about. Just go ahead.
Well, it was my boss then, the late Sam Simon, said we should do a team where Mr. Burns hires a bunch of ringers to play softball, and we'll get 9 major league players. And I was like, 9? That's impossible. I was like the skeptic.
Yeah.
And he said, no, you'll get them when they come to play the Yankees, or when they come to play the Angels or the Dodgers. Mm-hmm. And so I was in rotisserie baseball at the time, so it was my dream. You know, you're like just assembling this team of all-stars. And you guys were both on the Yankees, so you came with Mattingly at the same time. And what was funny was Steve was playing in a band, and Mattingly, we had doing dishes, and Mattingly said to us, I don't like doing dishes. Why is he in a band? And we're like, I don't know. It's in the script. Can't be changed, which of course it could have been, but
yeah,
didn't change it. And but he was great. You were all great. And I never would have dreamed the longevity that episode's had. It's insane. As you mentioned, we just a few years ago went to the Hall of Fame with the episode, and you were there, and Ozzie Smith and Wade Boggs.
Right. Al, I got to ask you too. I mean, Homer Simpson was legitimately inducted into the Hall of Fame at Cooperstown. As Al mentioned, I was there and I got to experience that. So I tell everybody that, yes, I am in the Hall of Fame. Legitimately, I am part of the Hall of Fame, but not through my baseball accord. It was all, of course, from being on The Simpsons. But did anybody really expect? I mean, is this one of the best shows that you guys done, the baseball show? Did anybody expect that it was going to have this much leg?
I'll tell you, no, nobody did. We actually, for one time only, read 2 scripts in a row, and the baseball script was the second script. So when we read the baseball script, and none of you guys were there, of course, pure silence. It was a disaster. Everybody was going, "This show's terrible." And we're like, no, it'll be much better when we get the players in. Yeah. And I won't say who, but a couple cast members, every time we would do pickups for the show, would go, "Oh, that one again."
Yeah.
Cut to Hall of Fame.
I got to ask you, there's so many questions I want to ask you. But one of the things is, how did you guys possibly come up with, Ken Griffey's going to drink a tonic and get this gigantic head. Roger Clemens is going to turn into a half man, half chicken. Wade Boggs is going to fight some guy at a bar arguing about, people in England. I mean, how did they possibly get to these things? And you also had to have it of the moment, because one of Don Mattingly's issues was what was current actually happening really in baseball is he got in this argument with the manager because of his damn sideburns. I mean, how did you bring this all together?
Well, the majority of it are credited to by the writer John Schwartzwalder, who's a huge baseball fan, except his knowledge of baseball is like Mr. Burns. It ends at about like 1920. So he's always talking about teams like the Cleveland Spiders. He made sure that a guy that on Burns's projected lineup had been dead 100 years. And he came up with like the gigantism and a lot of the crazy stuff. The one you mentioned is a really odd thing. That was me. My grandfather owned a hardware store. And the kids that worked there, he'd always say to them, "Get a haircut. Your hair's too long." Even when like these guys had like brush cuts, and my grandfather would still go, "Get a haircut." So we had Burns saying it to Mattingly, and then completely coincidentally, a year later, before the episode aired, Steinbrenner did it to Mattingly, and people thought that we were parodying that, and it was a complete coincidence. It was really insane.
Really? Wow. Yeah, we'll get back to the Simpsons stuff, because this is an amazing thing to talk about this great show. But I want people to know a little bit about you too. Now, you went to Harvard and you studied math. How did you end up with a career in comedy when you were going to Harvard to study math?
My writing partner, who was executive producer Mike Reese, he also came to the Hall of Fame thing. he wanted to go to Harvard to get on the Lampoon because it was just such a
Right.
great magazine. It was so funny. And when he got on, everybody that he met and I met through him was the funniest person in the world. I just I had to hang out with those guys, and I still do. A lot of them work for the Simpsons and turned into
Wow.
a career. And I guess I could have been a mathematician, but I don't think I'd have. Well, I don't know. Bill James is a mathematician. He's in the Hall of Fame, sort of. So
Right.
I guess
Yeah,
there's
that's
two
true.
ways to do that.
Right. Hey, what does your family think? I mean, here you are, you're going to Harvard, you're studying math, and now, oh my gosh, you're going into comedy. What does your family think about that?
They didn't really like it at first. My mom kept saying, well, you could go to business school. Don't forget, that's still an option. Then I got hired on the Johnny Carson show back in
Oh.
1984. And then that made everything okay. And then when it was
Yes.
The Simpsons, I just said, well, I'm on this cartoon. I don't know if anybody's going to watch it, but it's fun. And it obviously became the biggest thing in the world. So my mom likes the free merch. She's okay now.
Yeah, that's funny. I remember when I was a kid, I was a big Giants fan. I went to the Giants game and they were interviewing Willie McCovey and they were honoring him for something. And he turned to his mom right before they started the ceremony. He said, so mom, do you still want me to be a doctor? Here he's this magnificent star. Al, I got to ask you too, what do you think it is about this show that has resonated over, 3 decades? And it's still as great as it was way back then when it first got off the ground. What is it exactly that makes this thing just tick so well?
Well, the way it was designed by Jim Brooks, Matt Groening, and Sam Simon, it's got something for everybody. It's this little universe where it's got, intellectual kid, and it's got, the crazy bartender, and it's got a cranky grandpa. So, as I've aged, I've gone from Bart to Homer to Grandpa, and the way I think.
Right.
So it's really open to anybody's writing. You can have a very emotional story. You can have something that's a little sillier, like Homer at the bat. And now I think we get generations the way baseball does. I think people want to show their kids Homer at the bat. They go, I watched this when I was 10 and I want you to see it. And that's fantastic. And
Right.
I couldn't be happier about it.
Yeah, part of our podcast is a lot about leadership, Al. We have episodes in the morning where we encourage people to listen before they start their day. Now, you've been a showrunner for The Simpsons for a long time. What have you learned about those leadership roles over the years, especially working in a field that is so darn competitive that it really does have a lot of pressure in it?
Well, if I was a manager, and I don't know him particularly, but I think I'd be more like Joe Torre, who I think was a little bit low key and a little bit, just like, you guys do your best. I'm here on a great team. I just want to get the best out of every player. And the kind of manager I miss. I know you played under Tommy Lasorda, and now you hear these audio tapes of him yelling.
Yeah. Oh, the audio tapes are something. They're great. But Al, having been in the locker room with him, I can remember we had spring training, and it was getting a little bit lackadaisical in there. Tommy Lasorda went through a tirade. I don't know if he had a bad night before because of a bad dinner or whatever, but he liked to drop the F-bomb, of course. Yeah. And so Jerry Royce had a clicker there, and we actually clicked. It was 76 F-bombs he dropped during one meeting. This is no lie. We actually, he had a clicker, and every time he'd say the word, you hear this click going off. It was actually 76 times he used the F-bomb. It was unbelievable. So just a little insight for Tommy.
There's a rumor that I forget what key situation. He just went up to the pitcher and just goes, throw an F-bomb strike. That's what he just kept saying.
Exactly right.
That's a good rule for pitchers.
Hey, I heard him one time. I don't know I forgot which series it was in, but Jesse Orozco was having trouble throwing strikes. And I'm telling you, I've seen Tommy kind of lose his temper or whatnot, but he came out to the mound, and you're supposed to work with people's strengths, and what we talk about that, and you try to get them on the right track. He just absolutely eviscerated, Jesse Orozco when he was out there. And he just basically told him, if you don't get people out, we're going to lose and we're never going to the World Series. So get it the F done. And Jesse went out there and he got the next guys out. I mean, some guys, you got to know which buttons to push. Isn't that right, Al? I mean, as a manager?
It is, although I think that's like a bit of, more old school Leo DeRocha stuff. I mean, I don't know.
Yes, I think
now
so.
These guys make 100 million, 30 million a year. So you got to be a little careful of what you say.
Sure.
I miss it. I mean, I saw many games Tommy managed, and as you know, 2 World Series champs while he was here, and it was really enjoyable.
Al, I got to ask you this question. I've read a lot about you, and I know that your sister was actually pretty funny growing up too, and that you were more interested in math and science as a teenager. So, how did your experiences growing up in that household kind of get you into comedy? Because was your sister really that funny?
My sister was the Bart. She was more rambunctious. Dad would want her to say grace. She'd go rub it up, dub, thanks for the grub and all that. And I would just kind of hide with a book, like Lisa. I didn't play sax, but I played piano.
Right.
Also, I will credit, I was born outside Detroit. And so, Detroit as a sports town and as a town in general is like always on the comeback. Also,
Yes, that's right.
I've been a sort of a Detroiter for 60 years, and people go, "Oh, it's coming back now," and I go, "Keep waiting." So,
Yeah.
but maybe the Tigers in the city are coming back this year.
Yeah, well, the Tigers, they've done a lot as far as the draft is going, as we're talking about in baseball now, and they really have concentrated on a lot of their pitching, and they've got a lot of young pitching coming up through their system. So I think that's something that's maybe something that they could look forward to. As far as that's where the development starts, right there is in the pitching staff. So maybe the Tigers have that going forward to them with them. But growing up there, what did you think when the Dodgers got Kirk Gibson over in that? Actually, that iconic home run he hit.
That was the worst. I know everybody in LA was ecstatic. People don't remember there was a weird thing about free agency and nobody would sign Kirk Gibson, which made no sense because he was great. And then they overturned it and the Dodgers signed him right before the 88 season.
Right.
And the Tigers in 87 had been great. And the whole Dodgers season, I was like, the Tigers could have been this team. The Tigers could have won the World Series. The Kirk Gibson home run, with the Dodgers, you just go like, as a Detroit fan, your heart is breaking because you miss the guy. Good for him. And he did the same thing in Detroit in 84. But it's that really made me say, I have to say,
Can you believe this? Yeah.
I know.
He did make a huge difference on our team. There's no question about it. But Al, I wanted to ask you too about the state of baseball today and where it's going and how you still like the game. All these question marks about, well, baseball's too long, it's boring, there's so many strikeouts, not enough balls are in play because everybody's going for the long ball, kind of like the old version better. What's your assessment on the game right now, Al? How do you look at that?
The only problem I have as a fan is that a lot of teams now decide we might as well lose 100 games a year for 3 years and really not try to win to get good draft picks, which the Tigers did, and they did get good draft picks. I think Torkelson's going to be great. But as a fan, you go, I don't want to go to Anaheim to see Detroit play when they're going to lose 114 games.
Well, yeah, and that what that's called is called tanking, and that's one of the things that the players are trying to get over with in this next collective bargaining agreement, because they want teams to be competitive all the way through, and when they're trying to just say, well, we're going to lose anyway, let's just go ahead and try to position ourselves to get the better draft pick. That's where they're going to go through kind of like a lottery system that they put out there. So that might be in the works. What do you think about the long ball? I mean, today that's what people really dig. It seems to be they'll go with the strikeout as long as the long ball is there. Do you like that style, Al? Or do you like more of the bunt, move guys over and manufacture the runs?
Well, the thing, when I was doing rotisserie, when you guys were on The Simpsons, obviously the big thing was steroids, and it kind of screwed everything up for me because you used to go 60 home runs was it. Like if you hit 60, you must have been really amazing.
Yeah.
Then suddenly 70 and 73. And I also go, I think Barry Bonds should be in the Hall of Fame because I go, he was only going, well, I'm going to do what everybody else is doing, without getting into it. And he was, probably the best hitter in the game at the time. So I just go, the management allowed it. And now we're going, well, he can't get in. And I go, it makes no sense to me. It's like he was just doing what the teams allowed.
Yeah, they did. And, it's I think those days are gone. I think we're going to see more people just not trying to go down that road of the steroids, because there's just too many chemists that are just onto this thing that are hired by Major League Baseball where they're kind of figuring these things out. But hey, I wanted to ask you another thing about Homer. When you guys were inducting him in the Hall of Fame, that was such a great moment. Does Homer continue on that line of, being this great baseball player? After all, he was in the Hall of Fame, or is this going to be it for Homer? Where I don't want to take any scripts out of your lap here, but I just kind of wanted to know where Homer is in baseball.
Don't forget, he won the game by getting hit in the head. So he probably has a bad case
right.
of CTE. And I think if he was smart, he's also fallen down a cliff more than once. And, if he was smart, he would hang it up.
Yeah.
But again, I'll just say that doing that episode, I never dreamed we would do it. I never dreamed. I don't know how many guys in that team are on the Hall of Fame. 4, and everybody was great. And it's still with us. Like I hear like people like yourself who are on that episode still get asked about it like every week.
Exactly. I guess there's over 700 episodes on The Simpsons. That's incredible. What are some of your favorites? Besides ours? I mean, I think you liked our episode, but what are some of your favorites?
Yours is one. The first one we did, the Christmas show, which was just like this really sweet, amazing episode. I wrote one recently myself that was like a Homer and Lisa bond over the book Kill a Mockingbird. I thought that was really good. It's too many to say. It's like, what's your favorite kid? It's like there's just so many episodes where you just go, I can't believe it, and I'm so grateful we're still doing it. I mean, that's wonderful. When you talk about kind of like the sentimental parts of it, and Homer does get sentimental at times. I know that you have affinity for Lisa, the character in Lisa. Yes. Tell us a little bit why you like Lisa so much. Well, Lisa is often the voice of the writers because, as opposed to Bart, who's kind of an exhibitionist, Lisa's the one who's like sort of steps back and observes things, and maybe is like studying really hard to try to get to a better place. And there's a lot of Lisas in the writing world, so that's why I think a lot of the writers tend to identify with her. Also identify with comic book guy.
I gotcha.
Yeah, I collected comic books, and I have that attitude of worst episode ever. So,
yeah.
I hope nobody says this about your podcast.
I hope not. No, you're not going to be. Don't worry about that one. And I know this has been asked of you before, Al, but I wanted to know that, the Simpsons really does rely on some of the pop culture references. I love it. How has the show impacted pop culture, do you think?
It's insane. I mean, this is a true story. One episode I like very much. We produced one where Lisa gave Ralph a Valentine, a little train that said, "I choo choo choose you." That was actually a Valentine I got as a third grader from a girl. And now you can buy it. It's like the most famous Valentine ever. And I never would have dreamed. I mean, these little things that you did in your job in 1992, people are still talking about. They use words from The Simpsons, in basic speech. There's a thing we did in the episode where we said, they used to always go like, they were booing, the announcer would go, they're not saying boo, they're saying, boon or whatever. And we said Burns because it was Mr. Burns. And it's a thing, I mean, and that one I have to say, we did get from baseball announcers. That was
I see. I see. Have you guys ever thought about, well, I'm sure you guys have thought about everything. What the heck am I asking you this for? But I thought, something to do with like, a Vin Scully or some of the great announcers in baseball, some people that bring baseball into our TV, into our households or into our cars. We listen to them on radio. Is there a chance that the Simpsons might go there? And because there are some really good announcers out there, Teddy Leitner for the San Diego Padres is unbelievable. Of course, the great Vin Scully's still with us. There's probably we tried to
get Vin Scully because Harry Shearer in our cast does a fantastic Vin. I mean, a lot of people do Vin Scully, but Harry's is perfect. And we went to Mr. Scully, and he said, "You know what? I think Harry's is so good, I'll let him do it." And so it was really good, and it was very sweet of him. And I saw him once in person. He just seemed like the kindest guy and amazing. I mean, I think he covered the Dodgers in '49 or something. So
Vin was there. Yeah. I mean, he was way back there in Brooklyn, of course. So it was a long time before the Dodgers came out in '58. So yeah, Vin has been there. It was there just for absolutely ever, and just a remarkable person too. I loved having. It was really great. Sometimes is when we'd be at home at Dodger Stadium. The announcers there where they are, they sit kind of like right in the middle of the stadium, the loge section, in the back, of course, and their voices would reverberate out. So, one time I had a guy on second base during the timeout, and he says, "Hey man, Steve, did you realize that I'm on second base and I could listen to Vin Scully calling the game? It just bounces out into the field." So the guys were turned on that they could hear Scully, during the game. So that's how much prominence Vin had, I guess I could say. But
I heard this Gibson story about the night he hit the home run, which was you could hear Vin Scully going, "Well, one thing we know, Kirk Gibson won't be playing tonight." he's
Right.
like, I'll show him. I'm kidding.
No, he said something like, "Yeah, you know what? Yeah, of course I'm going to be playing tonight." Hey, Al, got to ask you about Matt Groening. I mean,
Sure.
he's the creator of The Simpsons, of course. So our listeners want to know about Matt. How is it working with Matt? How is he?
Oh, he's fantastic. I mean, he's a genius on multiple levels. He's done other shows like Futurama and Disenchantment, but I mean, he designed the characters in a way that's so fantastic. I always say, like, if you ask a 7-year-old to draw Bart, they can do it, and you can figure it out who it is. He created the universe. He wrote the shorts, which were really the basis for the whole series, and you can see all the characters took place there. The cast: Nancy Cartwright, Dan Castellaneta, Julie Kavner in those shorts. So I owe him, this incredible career, and he's a pleasure to work with, and just like an amazing figure. I mean, it's like the greatest thing in my career that I got to work with him.
Wow, that's fantastic. I wanted to ask you too, because we do a lot of shorts on this podcast as well, and I wanted to ask you, 700 episodes plus. Do you ever think, my gosh, we're going to run out of stuff to talk about? How do you get into that mindset, get into the well, and find more things to come up? And they're always good. How are you always good?
Every time it's a hard thing, and I'm working on one now, and I'm going, oh God, is this good enough? And you just never give up. You're always just going, I got to make it as good as everything else. I thought about it once in terms of sports, which is, I bet the hardest thing is, like, after a season ends, to go, now I got to get in great shape for the next season.
Yeah.
I got injuries, and I assume, again, one of the things that people probably don't know is how much athletes play hurt, or how many things, like, over the course of a career accumulate.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah. And I just thought, man, if I was like, and I'm 61 now, but if I was, say, 36, and someone said, okay, you're going to get in shape to play baseball again for 162 games, I go, I don't know. And,
Yeah.
it's I'm sure it's harder than people think.
Yeah. And it's like anything else. I mean, the show is going to constantly evolve. I mean, it's evolved so much from when it first started. It's going to continue to evolve. Where does The Simpsons go? Do you guys just kind of let that take care of itself, or is there no plan, or you're just going, is it in the moment? How do you guys do this?
The thing, there've been other people who've been great, besides me running the show, that all of us have done is try to make sure that we don't screw up the basic premise. In other words, we change it a little here and there. Sadly, a couple of the actors have passed away. Fortunately, none of the, principal actors, but somebody like Bart's teacher, so we retired the character. But in general, the show has the same basic,
Yes.
status in society that it did 40 years ago, except that back when he started, there were no cell phones, there was no internet. So we have to make changes like that. And people go, like, it's so weird to see, Homer with an iPhone. I go, like, well, what do you expect? It'd be even weirder to see Homer with, like, a, old, 80s rotary phone.
Yeah.
So that's it. We make changes to accommodate what, people watch, and what
Sure.
we do now. But and for example, with COVID, we just said, well, we assume these episodes are going to be on for 5, 10, who knows how many more years. So we did a little bit of a reference to it, but we didn't figure that the way that people are living now and starting to come out of is going to be the way they're going to be thinking 5 years from now.
Yeah. And what's amazing too, Al, is, we've seen the different shows come on, and they've been around for a long time, and then they evolve into something else, and people grow up. And the great thing about animation is you guys have pretty much had the same characters, right? And they're still there. They're still good. And it's amazing that your show evolves, but the characters are still basically the same characters. It's amazing how you guys have done that.
It's amazing how someone like Harry Shearer's voice is fantastic. I marvel at it, on the current takes that we get, and that because it's animation, they're ageless. So yeah, in real life, if there was a real Bart, he'd be 42 in short pants, living in his parents' house. It'd be the saddest thing in the world. So
That's great.
but again, people don't, kids today consider it their show. Like during the pandemic, a lot of kids, friends of my daughter, I have a 17-year-old, would binge The Simpsons, and so that's great. That's great that theirs too. It's like, every generation can discover it.
Yeah. You know what I like about you guys too, Al, is you guys have never gone to the cheap comedy, where you had to, make fun of somebody where it's not right, or you had, the swear words or everything like that. You guys have stuck with this comedy, the basic premise, the same characters, and it's just amazing every time. I guess The Simpsons is pretty much heard and watched, I should say, all over the world, isn't it?
There's like nowhere you can go where you don't like. When I was in Italy like 20 years ago, somebody goes, "Oh, there's a Homer in our kitchen," like everybody knows it. And I would credit with the sort of, I think the gracious attitude of The Simpsons is Jim Brooks. He did Mary Tyler Moore, which I loved when I was a kid. And yeah, his
I did
shows
too.
always had a heart to them, besides the humor, where you would just really root for the characters. And always you're trying to think, what would Jim do? And he's, still with us. I mean, he tells,
Yeah.
but it's like you're going, this is a show where you really want to consider the emotion of the characters.
Yes. I think that's a great point, because when people think about The Simpsons, they think, oh, this is hilarious, I got to see it this week. But it gets deeper than that, of course, because there's many times you see the emotional side, the touching side of some of the characters, right? How important is that to show the full concept here?
To me, it's the most important thing. It's that from the beginning, you believe that they were real people. And, even though he, doesn't do it so much now, but that he strangles Bart. Homer loves Bart. He wants Bart to be a better kid.
Yeah.
They're all trying to be a better family. And the whole thing is like the world is really tough for, a middle-class family, and that they're just trying to get by. So that's been the center for the whole time.
Yeah, that's great. Al, the podcast is really focused on inspiring people to, follow their passions and achieve their dreams. Tell us a little bit about your audience and about the experience working on what seems to be a dream job for a lot of people.
Oh, it's amazing. And I can say, if you ever have the opportunity to do something where you go, I really love doing it and I get paid for it, take that opportunity, and at the time, this is the truth. It was not the highest paying show. It was not the highest opportunity we had at the moment, but we saw that it was Matt Groening and Jim Brooks and Sam Simon that were running it, who we thought were all geniuses. And it was animated, which nothing had been for a long time. Mike Reese and myself just went, hey, we should do this because it's going to be great. It's, people may not watch it, forever, but and they have, but we just wanted to see what it would look like and work with those people. And that's never a mistake.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's the same thing I felt in baseball, Al. I feel like I've never had a job. I mean, you obviously have a job that people would die to have right now. So how do you feel about when you go to work every day and you're working with The Simpsons? I mean, you have a job that you can't even describe. I mean, people say that you're the executive producer of The Simpsons. I mean, they just got to think, how crazily great is this?
Well, I'll tell you, we've met, so many incredible people like yourself. We've, worked for so long on it. But the thing that is even more incredible to me is people will come up and they'll go, my parents are splitting up and I was having a bad time and I watched Simpson episodes to cheer me up. And I go, wow, that you really reach somebody like that is amazing. You just go, what I wouldn't give for that. That's the best thing you can hear.
Right. I agree, Al. That's a great thing. Maybe we'll end there. So, Al, I want to tell you, it's been such a pleasure to have you on and giving your great insight to one of the most iconic shows in the history of television. And I'm so grateful that you had me on when I was a baseball player. And thank you so much for your insight and coming on Sacks in the Morning. Really do appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. And I just hope Poppy gets in the Hall of Fame today.
Yes, that's right. It's Hall of Fame today. And we'll see what happens later on today. So thanks again, Al. Really appreciate it. If you like what you heard today, please give us a positive review, subscribe, and share the program. Also, be sure to listen to my Sacks in the Morning shorts 3 days a week for a couple of minutes of uplifting suggestions to get your day off to a great start. Our music is performed by my adorable niece, Elena Jane. And remember, to reach your goals and your dreams, follow your emotional heart.